parking lot. They say an armed bystander.
That's so cool.
Sit down.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's me, Laverne Mordred, to InfoHell. Sorry I haven't talked to you guys for a while. I've just been super busy, and I was off today, and I felt pretty sick, so I still feel a little under the weather as well. To get into news, over Sri Lanka, there has been a massive massacre that has happened. It's horrible and disgusting that these Islamic extremists who cause violence by basically blowing themselves up on Easter Sunday. It was horrible, and it was insane. And our leaders are refusing to call it a Christian massacre. And it was basically a Christian massacre, but they were targeted because they were Christian. And, you know, I know plenty of Muslims that I know of, that I'm close friends with, who don't agree with Islamic extremism and who think it's highly sickening and disgusting. They denounce these radical jihadists as this mentally insane people. But it's horrible what happened in Sri Lanka, and I pray for all the victims. This is insane. They had the Christchurch massacre over New Zealand. About 50 Muslims have been murdered, which is horrible and disgusting. And you know, all these liberal leaders come out, condemn white supremacy, which they should, and I completely highly understand that. It's disgusting how this bastard done these things, but also the issue is that the same liberal leaders who come out and says this stuff, but when it's Christians who are getting murdered, and I'm not a Christian, I'm very critical about any kind of religion and skeptical of any kind of religion, but when they call them Easter worshipers. What the fuck? And it was actually 6 times more people have died. I think it was about 800 people have died and got killed and murdered and they targeted hotels, they targeted churches, these suicide bombers. And this is one thing I keep on saying. I mean, you know, having a different culture over in this other country, there's going to be some tension here. You're going to cause a holy war. This is why I simply am against people coming over here as refugees, because their culture is completely separate from us. And you would hear about these rape stories from these migrants. Like, you know, this like, oh, it's so acceptable to their culture to do that. That's just horrible and sickening that it's like that almost. And I'm not, and that's, like I said, I'm not saying all refugees, or I'm not saying all Muslims like that. There's modern Muslims who are completely against, 100% against Islamic extremists or ISIS and jihadism. You have all these liberals be like with open bleeding hearts and you know, with the, you know, using emotional blackmail and not actually thinking. Instead of this, they're just thinking more of an emotion. It's like, we should bring all these refugees in here and we're so lovely and we have a big heart. No, you can't. It's just because we have check and balances, make sure who's here, who's not. You had over in Sri Lanka a massive terrorist attack, and then when you bring people in here with different cultures, not the fact that there's different cultures that you don't know, and you don't know what their intentions are when they get here. Majority of Muslims, about 90% of them are modern Muslims. They're fantastic people. But you got the 10% who are extremists, who have bad intentions. And, you know, that's the thing is, you can't run from your problems. So they're bringing their problems here, and that's the worst part is. So this is a warning for everybody else. This is going to get worse if you're going to allow an open border to happen. This is insane, and it's deeply crazy. It's suicidal. There's checks and balances. We bring in a million immigrants in the United States every year, but liberals think we should bring more. That's insane. I think the check and balances we have right now works better, and it has done nothing wrong with us. We got more news for you as well. The insane PC culture police and the Puritans, the stick in the muds, and the little antsy little babies who use punk rock as a safe space, is now bashing on Ace Ventura Pet Detective because they claim it's problematic and transphobic. It's a movie. Get the hell over yourself. Quit being such a stick in the mud. And please, do me a favor. Quit censoring everybody and everything because you're sounding like you're basically sounding like a bunch of Puritans. Just sit down and shut the hell up.
Murphy, isn't it?
This is why I say the progressives these days, Reverend Aaron, are not punk rock anymore because they're a bunch of soy boy losers who basically want to censor everything and silence speeches and everything's offensive. Punk rock's supposed to be offensive, thank you very much, guys. So, if you're offended by Ace Ventura, you can go fuck yourself so hard. And you know what? Hey, you know what? Live it up and get drunk, and I'm gonna smoke the pot I want to because, it seems kind of funny. Libertarianism is the new punk rock. And you can't be the dominant culture and the counterculture because obviously you're the dominant culture because there's tons of magazines, there's tons of articles about this. Basically, you're the ones who are pushing down on us. You're not fighting the machine. You are the machine. You are the machine. So I am raging against the machine. But also, we got some more onto news as well. Hateful, bigoted, fat people are being hateful, bigoted, fat people as usual, the Puritans as well, relating to, dieting or getting your kids to eat a healthy diet as Nazis. That's pretty sad. Here we go. Here's the article right here. A fat sex therapist, which is, I think that's kind of an odd combination. I mean, I can't really judge too much because I'm fat, but golly, see a picture of her, God, she's huger than a cow. But she's very hypocritical. I mean, yeah, I'm going to judge her, yeah, because she's judging other people who want to choose healthy lifestyles, and you probably think I'm a hypocrite. Oh, well, I don't give a shit. But she's more of a hypocrite. But she's relating to people who are, trainers and people who are in the health. She's doing that as a comparison to them as Nazis or white nationalists. Are you mentally insane? And calling that putting your kids on a diet. And she's calling it child abuse. What the fuck? God, she is mentally insane. There's something wrong with this person. I really think so. Homegirl, it is none of your fucking business what a parent does for their kids, because the kids are not adults. They can't make grown-up decisions by themselves. So when I was a kid, I was taught to eat healthy. So I mean, if you're telling these kids to eat junk food and greasy junk crap, they're gonna stunt their growth and they're gonna be 4'3" the rest of their fucking lives. Yeah, that's fantastic. That's really smart. Bitch, it is none of your goddamn business what other adults do with their kids and their diets. You're not an expert or a health expert. So, I mean, if you want to sit there and eat Twinkies all day and sit in your fat ass and watch, wrestling, and I do that, but you get my point. I'm not judging anybody what they want to do. Let them do what they want to do. Here's the rest of the article, right here. Also, this is the one thing I simply just don't get. I just don't get this crap. How the hell you can be a fat sex therapist? I'm not going to get advice from you, especially when you're this mentally insane, thinking that personal trainers are Nazis and white supremacists, and then you think it's child abuse to put your child on a diet. Hell, I think everybody should be on a diet. I mean, hell, even my fat ass needs to be on a diet. But, I mean, really? Really? This is why I sit there and say progressivism is not punk rock. Anti-progressivism is the new punk rock because of this bullshit. And, this is from these progressives. Listen to this right here, okay? Nancy Pelosi's a fucking bitch. She's a fucking creep keeper looking ugly ass bitch. This woman right here is a bitch. And if you don't like my language, you can just shove it. just shove it. You can go to a different channel. I don't care. I really don't care. It's freedom of speech. If you don't like it, oh well, deal with it. A lot of these progressives, they act like a bunch of authoritarian jackasses, and it proves it here. The Fat Pride movement are basically guilting other, skinny people and attractive people. And I'm pretty big. I'm pretty fat. I'm a heavyset guy. But if you're skinny and you have a good genetics that you can probably eat anything the fuck you want to, and still stay skinny. Hey, you know what? I'm not gonna be jealous. I'm not gonna be envious because I'm not a child. I'm a fucking adult. Unlike some people. More news for you. Butthead Bernie Sanders had to say something incredibly stupid, ignorant. Don't get me wrong. It opened the discussion up, and there's some. I think there's some insight that I can sit there and see that there is. Certain things that I can sit there and say, yeah, to a certain extent, yes, I can kind of agree, but kind of don't agree because the extremes of the extremes. You know what I'm saying? Bernie Sanders sit there during a town hall that he is willing to give even people in prison, felonies, guys who have felonies, the right to vote. There's some stuff about it I don't like, and somehow I don't like. Why people in prison who basically committed a violent crime, a terrorist who killed the Boston bomber, who killed tons of people and took away their rights, their lives, and killed them. Why they should have the right to vote to determine the rate of our country. This is completely stupid and ignorant what Bernie Sanders says. I completely understand if I have a few friends who are felons, who don't have the right to vote, who did something stupid when they were younger. I know a guy named LaRon who did something really dumb when he was like 18 years old. He went up in prison for about 15 years. He got out. He changed his life around. He doesn't, for a long period of time, he was out of prison for 10 years. He hasn't done any violent crime. He hasn't not even get a parking ticket. And yet, he doesn't have the right to vote because it happened a long time ago, about 10 years ago. He served his time, he's out, but somebody who's a rapist or a murderer or somebody who committed a felony charge, no, I would say hell no. A drug possession, I can simply say that when you serve your time, I think you should give them your rights back. I even say that after about 10 or 20 years, if you haven't committed any kind of form of problems, I think you should have your gun rights back to you. I'll be honest with you, because there's a few people I know of who are ex-drug heads who went to prison, who are good, honest people, but they done something that were younger that it was completely insane. This is what he said.
Where do you draw the line? If you commit murder, should you be allowed to vote in the United States? But it is the answer from that man, Bernie Sanders, when asked by somebody in the audience about voting rights for people in prison, that has everybody talking today.
It was a surprise to me, which was when Senator Bernie Sanders said he supported voting rights for people in prison, felons in prison, including the worst of the worst.
You have said that you believe that people with felony records should be allowed to vote while in prison. Does this mean that you would support enfranchising people like the Boston Marathon bomber, a convicted terrorist and murderer? Do you think that those convicted of sexual assault should have the opportunity to vote for politicians who could have a direct impact on women's rights?
If somebody commits a serious crime, sexual assault, murder, they're going to be punished. They may be in jail for 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, their whole lives. That's what happens when you commit a serious crime. But I think the right to vote is inherent to our democracy. Yes, even for terrible people. It happens in my own state of Vermont from the very first days of our state's history. What our Constitution says is that everybody can vote. That is true. So people in jail can vote.
But part of the punishment when you were convicted of a crime and you're incarcerated is you lose certain rights. You lose your freedom. And I think during that period, it does not make sense to have an exception for the right to vote.
So I believe that people who commit crimes, they pay the price. When they got out of jail, I believe they certainly should have the right to vote. But I do believe that even if they are in jail, they're paying their price to society, but that should not take away their inherent American right to participate in our democracy.
No, Bernie Sanders, they did not. They lost the right to democracy when they committed a violent crime and pose their will onto other people and killed, raped, or committed homicide, or fucked somebody up, basically ruining their life in a wheelchair. They don't have that right anymore, Mr. Bernie Sanders. They're the ones who ruin it. They're the ones who's paying for the consequences. And I can simply understand giving the rights to people who have, drug charges and, marijuana charges. I completely understand that, because that's simply not fair to them, because it's addiction. They can't help it. I understand that. I think instead of throwing people in prison, I think they need to take them to rehab. Some refuse to take rehab, and they rather go to prison. It's crazy. I've seen it before. But like I said, Bernie Sanders, you don't make any sense. You're giving people who are like Jeffrey Dahmer, Charles Manson, people who are not right in the fucking head, who's not mentally there, who actually put themselves into a situation to kill somebody, or hurt somebody, or rape somebody, or you get my point, that they're sociopaths. And you're telling me they have the right, they have certain rights, but they don't have the right because they gave their rights away because they've done a crime in the first place, Bernie Sanders. You're saying you're going to let rapists make decisions for our country? Are you insane? I thought you were for women's rights. I thought you were for the Me Too movement. But clearly you're not. There's some stuff about Bernie Sanders I simply agreed with and simply disagreed with. But this really pushes the envelope way too far. Bernie, really, you're an idiot. You say some things are rights and some things are not rights. You say free college and free healthcare is a right. And then you say, the First Amendment and speaking your mind and freedom of religion. Oh, that's not a right to you, Mr. Bernie Sanders. That's not a right. Oh, gun rights are not a right to you, Mr. Bernie Sanders. Fuck that. I can understand the argument of health insurance, of universal health insurance. You want to have a better health insurance. I think anybody and everybody, regardless of where I live, want a better health insurance. I can simply understand that. But college, and then when you sit there and say gun rights are not rights, and when you say the First Amendment's not rights, you know what, Bernie Sanders? You are fucked up in the head. I used to have some respect for you on point, but you started selling out to Clinton in the first place, taking it up the ass by her. And after the DNC fucked you over, you didn't have enough nerve to. And I know, you're just playing for the team. Fuck that. Playing for what team? Okay, when Ted Cruz versus Donald Trump on the primaries, Republican primaries, when it came down to it, Ted Cruz had enough balls and said, look, fuck the party politics. I'm not going to be for Mr. Donald Trump because he disrespected my wife. He had enough nerve to say, I'm not going to support the president. So, Mr. Bernie Sanders and all the people who will support Bernie Sanders, are you mentally insane? I understand you want to compromise that, to get people, who have felony charges, who are out of prison for something that is not a violent crime. I completely understand that, giving them their rights away, giving the rights back to them. The right to vote, the right to Second Amendments. I agree with that, but come on, rapists, murderers, serial killers, people who commit homicide. No, fuck that. You guys have a fantastic day. God bless America. You guys have a fantastic one. And I am out of here.